You are listening to the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast. I'm Nicole Holcomb, former teacher and school counselor turned civil rights attorney and podcast host. It wasn't that long ago that we learned the reason that our daughter was struggling to learn to read in first grade was dyslexia. Fast forward 4 years past many hours of research and collaborating with experts in the field of dyslexia. Now I'm sharing the lessons I have learned that took me from being an overwhelmed mom who didn't understand dyslexia to a go-to mom who is helping hundreds of moms each week through education and collaboration. I created the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies and hacks to help you do the same. If you're feeling alone and lost on your parenting dyslexia journey and you're looking to find a mom who gets it, you're in the right place. Let's jump in and get started. Katie Larew is back on the podcast today from Assistive Technology for Dyslexia, and we are talking about how to successfully implement assistive technology tools. And Katie's also going to give us some roadblocks and barriers to be aware of as we implement these amazing assistive technology tools to help our kiddos. And she's also going to give us some tips for how to enjoy our summer and school breaks. So let's jump right in and enjoy the show. I am so excited to have Katie Larew back on the show, all about assistive technology for dyslexia. Some of you may remember Katie from episode 92. That was in October of 2021. And I don't know, me and Katie have connected, and we are so excited to bring you some more assistive technology information. And so it's going to be all the things, and it's going to be lots of fun. And so we are ready to get started. Katie, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It's so great to be here again.
Well, I'm so excited to have you back. And just a little plug for Katie. For those of you that do not know, not only was Katie on the 92nd episode, but she is also in our listening guide that we just released last week to celebrate our top 10 episodes for our first 100 episodes. So it was all about celebration. We were celebrating over here 100 episodes recorded, over 61,000 downloads, and yours truly had a birthday. We'll talk about that another day. But then Katie was on there as one of the top 10. So we definitely wanted to bring her back for you to hear more about her amazing work that she's been doing now for 15 years. So for those who are new to our podcast and maybe haven't, dialed back some of their binge listening to episode 92, can you just do a quick little intro of who Katie is so that people kind of know a little bit about you before we get started today?
Absolutely. First and foremost, happy belated birthday. I'm sorry.
Thank you. It was the big 50, so we're really not talking about it, but it's all good.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And on St. Patrick's Day. So it's always fun to celebrate every year. So
absolutely. It's a special day in many ways. So yes, I am the owner of Assistive Technology for Dyslexia, and I have worked in the field of special education for the past, as you said, 15 years. I've worked as a classroom special education teacher, as well as an assistive technology specialist, working with students, parents, teachers, service providers, and really trying to provide them with tools and supports for their students and children to be able to access the curriculum. And when I say access the curriculum, one of the things that you can kind of start to think about is, think about the areas of the school day or at home, whether you're doing homeschool or supporting your child with their homework, and the areas that they struggle in, and then thinking about tools and ways to support them. So if they struggle with reading a worksheet or reading a piece of text or writing on the worksheet, completing assignments, organizing thoughts, etc. So that's just a little summary, basically, of assistive technology and basically making things accessible for the students.
Right. Absolutely. And again, for those that didn't listen to episode 92, we really dig more into the definitions and what it looks like and how you go about getting your student evaluated for that and how you get the help that you need, identifying what it is that your child needs. And Katie can help you with that because she does that all day long. She helps people, she helps families and kiddos figure out what is best for them. Because as you know, all dyslexics are different, right? So our brains all work differently, and that's no different for our dyslexic kiddos. And so what may be great for my daughter might not be good for yours. So it's always important to get a specific evaluation for assistive technology, or get someone in the field like Katie, who's a specialist, who can really help you identify what those things are and kind of, get through the noise, because it is amazing that we do live in a time where there's so much out there for us, and so many available resources, and they're popping up daily, right, Katie?
Yes.
But it can also, from a mom's perspective, be a little overwhelming, right? Like, how do I choose the right one? How do I know what to look for? So what we're going to spend a good bit of today talking about is really how to successfully, I can't speak today, implement the assistive technology tools. So moms, you've gotten through the first hurdle of choosing. And if you haven't yet, it's okay. Keep listening to today's episode. We can circle back and help you with episode 92, or reach out to Katie directly. We'll have some information in the show notes, how you can get in touch with her. So don't get concerned if you don't know right this minute what assistive technology tools your child needs. But keep listening, because we can do that later, right? What you do need to know is, though, once you identify these pieces, what do you do next? Like, how do I know I'm using the right ones? What happens if I choose something and it doesn't work? So all those things. So let's start off, Katie, talking a little bit about, as a parent, I've decided, and I've worked with, a specialist, and I've decided what the assistive technology tools are we want to start with. How do I successfully implement those pieces?
So there are so many pieces to consider with the implementation. And absolutely, the first step is trying to identify those tools. And it's so important to have a conversation, both with your number one, with your child, because to really speak to what are they looking for supports with, and what are they feeling that they struggle with. So really trying to focus on their strengths. Think about, what are they comfortable with? What do you already know? Even if it's something that they utilize as just a game, or, for an outlet or something fun, think about those aspects of it, and then try to think about ways in which they can utilize their device to access the curriculum. So or it might be even the flip side of, if your child is associating, games and play, and, maybe that time to just, not think about anything, and that downtime, maybe with an iPad, then maybe that's not the type of device you want to use when it comes time for access to curriculum. So it might be, again, going back to the individual and what works best for them, but having that conversation. So let's just say, what do you find to be most comfortable to work with? And, when you think about having these types of assignments that you need help with, would you want to do it on an iPad, or would you want to do it on a different device, like a Chromebook or a laptop? And so one of the things is developing a plan. So having a conversation with your child, but then also with their teacher. If you are working at home and doing homeschool support, then having a conversation with anyone working with your child. So you have a plan in place about when you'll be using the tools. So I like to think about, when we think about the who, what, where, when, why, how, questions, going through each of them. Who is going to be using the tools? Who's going to be supporting the tools? So when are you going to be using it? So are there specific assignments that you'll be using them for? Are there specific times of the day? How to use it? Do you understand how to access all the features in the tools? Why are they using it? Do they understand that this is the purpose of utilizing word prediction, or this is, the benefits of using text to speech? What they can use it for, so what kind of tools are available, and then where they should be using it. Is it a specific classroom? Is it a specific type of assignment? So thinking about all those different aspects of the implementation piece is so important. And there's just so many things that can also happen as you're starting to implement.
Yeah. So let me ask you that, Katie. That's a great segue to that. So when I think about those things you just talked about, which I think are, great to think about with anything really, right? Like services and things of that nature. I love though these pieces that you talked about just now about having really a plan, developing a plan, and I talk about that too through the lens of creating a dyslexia battle blueprint and having a plan of action, and this can go right along with that as far as how do I tap into the assistive technology, because I mean, looking at our children's futures, it's all tech, right? Like even like you said, downtime is a lot of times tech, and there's debates on screen times and things like that we won't get into today. But I love the pieces of collaboration. I love the pieces of working with your child to identify those pieces, and then working with, whoever your community might be of support and experts. Is it a reading specialist? Is it a classroom teacher? Is it that, like you were saying, are you a homeschool parent who also has support from a psychologist or a therapist or a reading tutor or whatever it might look like, right? Having that conversation to figure out, what are some tools that are being used and what are some pieces that would be supportive for your child. And I love the idea of, because I talk about this a lot too, is just, bringing your child into the conversation. And I get, depending on their level of understanding their dyslexia and their age and things like that. But I mean, our daughter, probably before school started, right? Like probably before kindergarten, she had access to an iPad, right? And was doing some games that were educational and things of that nature. So it is like, what do they say? They're digital natives, right? Like that is just where they feel most comfortable. So it makes sense pairing the technology with support for them to be successful.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this though. So I said all that to say this, which is, so Katie, for parents that have done the first piece and they've identified the tools, and so now they're moving on to really, developing that plan. Is that something that they would have already done, or do you feel like that's something that, because I know what I've said in on IEP meetings, it's sometimes it'll be like, well, here is what your child needs, but then it's not really a conversation about the implementation steps and how do we think about, like you were saying, who's going to be using this and how are we using this and where are we using this, and does it look different? Is it a different type of device? Is that something that you work with families on to identify those pieces? Is that something that you also provide for support?
Yes, I do. And one of the reasons why that's so important is because sometimes there's reasons that we abandon technology or we don't utilize the tools because it's so exciting, especially when I share the tools of assistive technology and show them, okay, this is the word prediction, this is the text to speech, speech to text, different ways in which you can utilize the technology to support your child. And then thinking about the implementation piece, because you don't want the tools to not be utilized. And you want, again, your child to feel comfortable utilizing them. There's times where, I'll get feedback where students feel that they were not able to utilize a tool in a classroom. And, when the parents have a conversation with the teacher, it was just a, matter of the child maybe not thinking that they could use it. The teacher was completely on board with them using it, but it was going back to that conversation. Now, thinking about IEP meetings or thinking about different times of having a conversation with the teacher, again, thinking about that whole community that's working with your child. So you may have a case manager, and that case manager, in terms of helping develop the IEP, you have the general education teacher. You may also have some additional service providers. Having a collaborative conversation can be so helpful. So that way everybody's on board and everybody also understands what supports are available for that child to utilize, whether it be in the classroom, in their specific classroom, or to utilize for homework assignments. So also, it can be helpful having a conversation with the child's teacher or the case manager to talk about what has been working. What have they been using in the classroom? What specific tools are they utilizing? Any tips or strategies that they might have that you could also utilize at home. So whether it be specific words to prompt them or specific assignments that they're using, and then some examples so that you can then reference when you're at home and you're working an assignment. You can say, oh, remember that time that you used this, or when you were creating this graphic organizer, you used this program, and the different features. So really the conversation, so everybody's on board and understanding what's available.
Yeah, and I love that piece too, because one of the things I see a lot of too is that our children, as part of the process, they have to figure out how to self-advocate,
Mhm.
right? And so this is also just a piece of that, as well as how do I speak up with, like you were just giving an example. Let's say the teacher, everybody's on
Mhm.
board. Then the child gets to class and they're like, well, I didn't want to ask to use that. Well, how does she know you needed it? Like if it was, up to the student to decide. So it also, I guess, lends to the conversation of how does the student also self-advocate going forward? Because as they get older, that's going to be essential. And so it gives them almost a less threatening way too, to have conversations that are more self-advocacy of this would help me, and having those conversations and setting them up to have some examples of success
Mhm.
when that's already been approved. The teacher knows they're using it. And so it's just a matter of, these are the 2 steps you need to take to access it, right? Like you've got to go pick it up on the counter, and you've got to log into this website, like just really helping them see the how too, right? Like helping this child see how do they actually access that information, is very empowering for them through the self-advocacy lens, I would think.
And just to follow up on that as well, visuals can be really helpful. So as you're talking
Yes.
about the process, thinking about your child, what do they work best with? Is it something that they would have in their binder? Is it on like a little note card? Is it, something you have in your homework station by their desk, so that when they need to access a program or they need to utilize a tool, they have a step-by-step process, again, to support executive functioning, and if it's a check mark, for them to utilize. So having a visual reference, maybe it's also having an icon of the specific program so that they know when they're doing a writing assignment, they use this program, or, what the app looks like. So having visual references can be really helpful too.
So really having, I love that idea too, because I use that a lot just as an adult, is that, you have those, I'm trying to think what they're called now. Though, when you put something on your desktop, what is that called? A
Oh,
shortcut?
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like having a
Mhm.
shortcut, like I can't think, right? Even as an adult, you go, especially like at my job, I'll go and I need to do time, do my payroll or whatever for work. And then I see the little icon for
Mhm.
that. So I'm like, okay, I just click that on and it opens it up. But I think that would be good for students too. I hadn't really thought about that from the perspective of, for Chromebooks or iPad. I mean, obviously an iPad puts the apps on there, but for more of a computer-based programming, is that having those pieces on the desktop that are easily
Mhm.
seen, they might sometimes forget, right? Like our kiddos forget things.
Yeah.
And so if they see that visual reference, they might remember, oh, that green icon was for writing. Let me click that on and get some support. So I love that, because it also is front of mind,
Mhm.
like you said. And as we know, lots of dyslexics, they just, having those visual pictures is how they remember things. So that's a great tip there, is to have some type of visual reference. I love that idea, because then that keeps it. And then too, when they say, oh, I forgot, you can keep reminding them of that visual reference, or creating a different visual reference if that one's not working.
Yep. And in terms of like the iPad, to be able to have the specific apps that maybe they're utilizing, whether it be creating folders so that they know
Yes.
that this is their reading folder, this is their writing folder, whatever subjects that they're utilizing the apps for, you could do that. You could also bring them down to the bottom of the iPad screen and, having quick, easy access for shortcuts there. With the Chromebook, in terms of thinking of the bookmarks, and then pinning the extensions. So then they have the visuals. And again, the taking out those steps, because that can also be a roadblock for not utilizing the tools. If there's many
I love
steps
that.
involved, so the less steps involved in it, sometimes the easier to access the tools.
So I love that, because that really goes back to the how again, right? Like, how can we make it as easy as
Mhm.
possible for them not to get lost, for them? I know, like in our daughter's agenda, the very first page is all her
Yep.
passwords. So we forget how to get on Google Classroom. I'm like, let's go back and grab the agenda, because every password is listed in the front page. And so that's very helpful at home, as you can
Yeah.
imagine. But like you said, even just going in and bookmarking, with Google Classroom, I have to log her in as herself. So, it takes a minute, but like you said, even just, having those bookmarks and having things an easy reference. And we do that too with the iPad. Like we may have a gaming, folder. And so all the little fun, like whatever she's wanting to do. So yeah, so organizing those, but as a parent, doing that for your child is amazing, because it may take you a couple of minutes, but it will save them, one, frustration, right? two, just, I don't see it, so I'm not going to do it. Right. Kind of mentality of like, okay, well, it's not there. So, and I think too, just that, like you were saying with the executive functioning pieces, anything we can do to cut down the number of steps so that they feel successful and they actually use the thing, right? They actually use the program that we want them to use that will assist them in what they're doing, makes all the difference. So I love those pieces of not only a visual reference, but also thinking through how do we best organize this for them to make, how do we set it up as the adults to make it easy and user-friendly for them? And then also incorporating some pieces for them to self-advocate. So I love all that.
Exactly. I mean, you really want to try to set your child up for success. And this is another piece as part of the puzzle in terms of thinking about, as you would set up your homework table at home and think of, okay, you want your sharpened pencils. You want to make sure you have the pencil and paper and everything, all the tools easily accessible. Now it's kind of thinking about it in digital form as well and having them accessible. So,
and I love that because I don't know that people really think through that, right? You put the app on your iPad or your child says, hey, you say, okay, we're going to put this on for reading, writing, text to speech, whatever, speech to text. Gosh, what was I thinking? So yeah. So when you think about those pieces, like it may be, okay, well, we have it, but then how do we go about making it as easily accessible, I guess is maybe a way to say that, so that we're really thinking through those pieces. And so I love this conversation because I think for many families, they may, figure out, well, yes, some type of technology would help my child. And then they don't really think about the plan and they don't really develop the plan of how does this actually look and think through those pieces. So what do we do if when we're implementing, we find, and we are going to find, let me just tell moms up front, you are going to find that some things may not work for your child, may not resonate with them, may not click, may just not. And sometimes like programming, like sometimes you may, like we've had apps before where the programmer had some kind of glitch in it and it just didn't work. Now that's not usually with these larger companies, but things happen. So, or maybe for that particular child, it's just not working. So how do you, like, when you think about the barriers because what we don't want them to do is completely just shut down and not use any, because there is something, like you said, going back to the individual child of what resonates for them. You might not know that in the beginning, like you may have to do a little trial and error. So don't give up on that. So what kind of advice do you give to families when they're kind of starting out on this, developing a plan and knowing that it's okay when you get things wrong and go back and think through it again? So how do you kind of talk to families about the best approach for that?
So one of the things that I recommend is to approach assistive technology as an ongoing conversation. So when you're thinking about maybe that initial IEP meeting where you're talking about assistive technology and you're considering the different tools that could be helpful, very, very important time, and then developing the plan in terms of what it would actually look like in the classroom. But then recognizing that this does not just stop where this conversation at the IEP meeting, it's so important to continue the conversation with the teacher. Check in, and say, how are the tools being utilized in the classroom? Are they helpful? Having the conversation with your child as well, and recognizing that the supports may also change as time goes on. So again, thinking about your child and their specific areas of need, their strengths, and let's say they're in third grade right now, and come fourth grade, you have a whole new teacher, a whole new classroom, and thinking about all the things that you had in place for third grade. You did all the work, you did the training, everybody was on board. Having that conversation again with a new teacher can also be really helpful, so that again, everybody's on board and thinking about, are there any other areas that have come up that your child is struggling in? Do they need additional supports? Again, thinking about the troubleshooting aspect and the roadblocks and the barriers that can come up. I developed these 5 tips because these are the things that I've encountered that are the most common challenges and reasons why the supports might not be utilized. So is it okay if I just jump right into them?
Yes, okay. I love that. Yes, because that was you must have read my outline, because that's definitely the next place is like, where should we anticipate roadblocks?
Perfect.
And then
okay.
You tell us what to do with those when we get there, because we're going to hit some, right? That's all part of this journey. So yes, I would love for you to spend some time and I love what you just said too, because what did I say the other day? I was saying something about, well, you get to a point and you're never really done,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's continuously changing. It's a different season of life, or your child changes to a different, stage. My daughter just turned 11, so we're all in the hormonal stage, which is lovely. So, it's all these different stages. And I love the thought of growing the technology with the child, and it is an ongoing conversation. But I'm sure there is some common roadblocks people see, and then what do we do with those? So yeah, let's jump into those 5 things.
Well, and one of the things to really give you an understanding of why I, try to come up with these ideas, because I'm just realizing that the more conversations I'm having and, the feedback from parents or different students that I'm working with, they're again going and thinking about all the different types of information that's out there. I want to try to just really get right to it. So you can have that information right up front so that hopefully it will be successful from the start. So one of the things is the device, thinking about the device. Now, whether it be an iPad, Chromebook, a different tool that they might be utilizing, having that conversation about the device. Where is the device going to be located? Is this a device that your child's going to be bringing back from school each day? Is it school property? Is it staying at school, or is it going back and forth? Is it something that they utilize at home? And then thinking about a charging plan. Do you have a charging plan? I know that sounds so simple, but it's also one of the reasons why a child might not utilize a tool because the iPad wasn't charged, or
it happens every day, right? Every day. And there's a teacher out there going, thank you, Katie, because it happens and it seems like duh, but it happens, right? So yes, I love that part.
So again, thinking about that plan from the start and having that conversation with your child's teachers and talk about, okay, where are they going to charge the device? Are they going to have it in your classroom? Are they going to have it in this classroom? Is it going to be, if your child is changing classrooms, maybe in middle school or high school, is it going to be in the classroom that they start the day in, or, and are they bringing it home? Do you have a plan in place at home to charge the device? Again, super simple. But then going on to the location.
Well, yeah, because Katie, even simple, you hate for people to skip over it, right? Because it seems so simple until the day you get to school and it's not charged.
Right. Yes.
Right? Or you get to class and teacher's like, you didn't know you were supposed to charge that? And the child's like, no, was I supposed to charge that? Mom was, and they get home and mom's like, what? Oh, okay. Yes. We need to have a plan of how that looks. So I love to just, when you go ahead and identify those pieces for the device, that just takes one more thing off to worry about.
Yes,
right.
yes.
And one less thing to have as an obstacle of why the student didn't use the technology they needed. So yeah, so there's a teacher out there going, thank you, Katie, for reminding people to have a plan. And like you said, and that goes back to that collaboration of, don't just make an assumption that it's going to be done at school, and the school shouldn't just make an assumption, like have a plan. And it may be for some students that really struggle with executive functioning that they have a plan at home and at school. So that might be part of it, right?
And
all right,
with that, again, super simple, but something to think about is to have the charging cable. There'd be maybe having something at school and it stays at school, and then another one at home, so that they actually have the equipment needed to charge their device. And any accessories. So it's important to think about the accessories, because if your child is utilizing the text to speech, for example, to be able to listen to the text being read to them, it can be difficult in a classroom environment if there's other students that might be hearing it. So it can be helpful if you also have a set of headphones easily accessible. Now, it might be something that they keep in school or they keep in their backpack. So having, again, a system or plan in place. And then also, as you mentioned earlier, great strategy with the usernames and passwords. So having that accessible for your child to create the independent piece, and also any troubleshooting, because if you can't get into the program, you can't access the supports. So
is this still the device, or have we moved on to number 2? I'm sorry. Number 2, you're okay. I'm like, are we on number 2, or are we still talking about number 1 in devices and accessibility? So sorry, I just want to make sure. Good. So number 1 is all about the device. Yes. So
number 1, and what I've done is I've broken this down into these small pieces, even though, because we might think like a lot of these fall under like an umbrella term. Okay, the device. Well, Yeah, I mean, of course, includes all those pieces. I've broken it down because these are the barriers that I've seen the most common. So I wanted to highlight the specific five. So number one being the device. Number two being the charging plan and location. Number three, accessories. And number four, usernames and passwords. So to think about what, again, having that conversation, what are the accounts that your child needs a username and password for? And making sure you have access to those. Sometimes the teachers in different classrooms will have different types of accounts, but really it really depends on your child and what works best, whether it be something that's in their folder, in their planner, an index card, a sticker that's put on their device. Just again, having a conversation, say, okay, well, what do you think would work best for you? And then finally, thinking about that text to speech piece, thinking about textbooks and novels that your child may be reading in school, having a conversation with your child's teachers to find out, well, what are those textbooks? What are those novels that they're going to be reading so we can get them uploaded and installed on the device? And that's something that if they're utilizing a program, for example, like Bookshare, where they have a textbook available to them in a digital format, the teacher will need to add that to their account. So they need to have a sponsor to do that. So again, it's having a conversation so that the items are accessible to your child. And again, you might think, okay, well, when we had that meeting, we talked about having access to these books, but making sure we have that actual textbook for the year. And you can do that up front. You can do it at the start of the school year, so you're all ready to go. So just some things to think about.
Right. And when you were saying that too, I was thinking about that there are so many places and ways we can support our children. And one of the things that they do at my daughter's school is when they're reading a book in class, they will let us know, where what some of the resources are. So our school actually also uses Learning Ally. And so we're able to pull those down and put those on our child's bookshelf, and we have our own account at home where we can do that. But they also utilize YouTube, and so we can go and let her listen to someone read the book to her. So even a lot of times, in between reading it in class, or a lot of times I'll read it to them in class, is that they also encourage families to go back and re-listen to those chapters. And we can do that through a lot of different ways as to what works best for our child. It's great in the car too. Like she can listen to it on the way to school or on the way home from school. Usually on the way home, we have to have some time to decompress and just do nothing. So probably not as much on the way home, but on the way to school in the mornings, it's a great, opportunity to kind of refresh her brain and her mind about what they talked about yesterday in class, and to listen to a chapter. That can be very helpful, especially as we lead up to like a vocabulary test or an end of the book test. It helps kind of reaffirm some of those pieces. But I would think with the textbooks, as we get closer to having more textbooks for her, that would be something, even in college, right? As you've got students that transition from high school to college, that's going to be an important something to have available to students to be thinking about. And like I said earlier, I think we're living in a great time as far as the technology, because there is so much available. We have Audible accounts at our house, so we're able to listen to, a book in the car and things of that nature. And so there's so many pieces of accessibility for people to use, even just busy moms, right? To keep us organized. And so I love that you've broken those down into 5 tips, and they're easy to understand and manage, and they're manageable, right? And all those pieces help our child be successful, right? So I love that.
Well, and just to add on to the YouTube, a fun little feature, just to, again, thinking about the accessibility aspect of it. If your child is utilizing YouTube to listen to audiobooks, they also have the closed captioning feature. So I like to just bring attention to that, because again, when we listen to the book, it can be really helpful. And sometimes your child might have the physical book in front of them, so then they can visually see the text. But again, if it's on YouTube, they can auto generate the captions. And just another thing to add, sorry, I'm just adding a little bit more.
No, that's great, because that's a great feature that not everybody may be aware of. So thank you for that.
The text to speech also with the dual text highlighting. So again, to help with the tracking and to be able to assist with comprehension as well. So we're hearing the text, we're seeing the text, and then we also have the highlighting feature. So it's just
Okay, so say that piece again to make sure they got that.
Sure.
No, you're okay. What you call it? The dual, what you call it?
Dual text highlighting. So what that looks like is when you're having the text being read back to you, you see that like yellow bar. You can also change the color depending on what works for you. But as you're listening to it, you're seeing it follow along. So it can help with the tracking. So you can make sure you're paying attention and you know where you're at in terms of the text being read to you. And then also, just being able to listen to it.
Yeah, I love those features when they have that. I think Learning Ally is one of the ones that has that too, and we keep that on as well because it is helpful because as they're, the more exposure our dyslexics have to language and to what it looks like and how the words are spelled, and they have to have so many times that they see it before it's concrete. So I love that's a piece that you're also recommending to think about because it just goes along with, the more exposure, the better. Right. And so some of our kiddos are more auditory learners. I think my daughter is more auditory. She really can listen and have a very in-depth conversation about something. I'm very visual. So I like to see things. I like to have highlighted. And so, but I think having multiple ways that you're exposed to the text, I think it's helpful though, as well. So, cause they're hearing it, they're seeing it. And so all those pieces go right along with that. Wow. So that is a lot of info, moms, to take in. So we're going to put, all these goodies in the show notes so that you can get that information. And if you need to, you may be listening while you're walking or driving or doing dishes and stuff, you need to come back and re-listen again. I love to go back. I mean, we were just talking before we hit record. I was telling Katie that there are some people I follow as far as just, building a business and things of that nature. And I go back and re-listen to things that I'm like, okay, I need to know a little bit more about this. And so it is always encouraged that you go back and listen again. So if there are pieces today that you're like, okay, I want to kind of get my mind around this, or I want to take some notes, then come back and listen again. We would love to hear that you're doing that. And it helps you become, just even more aware of what's available when you can kind of sit down and piece through those things. But we'll definitely include a good amount of information in the show notes as well. One of the things though, Katie, before we kind of wrap up today that I wanted us to talk about, because it is March. It's crazy to think that it's just, what year is it? And we're in March. Okay. So anyway, so as I think about March and I think about, it for some of us, schools will be getting out here in a couple months and it'll be really like a couple of weeks by the time we have spring breaks and things like that. So as moms kind of position and start thinking about summer and thinking about summer tutoring and thinking about summer camps and just ways we can keep our kiddos busy, but yet productive, definitely there's going to be some downtime, right? And so are there any things, I think about summer, but this could also apply to school breaks when they have semesters, in between semesters, or, there's a week off for, snow, whatever, whenever there's a time where there's a break in school, or when you're not doing schooling, if you're homeschooling where you're taking a break, are there pieces that you recommend? Are there tips out there for moms that can help things be just a little less hectic for us as it relates to assistive technology? Give us some good nuggets of tips and hacks and recommendations in general of what you find works or what you're encouraging us to try here in the future.
So, I mean, again, having that conversation can be really helpful with your child's teacher to see if there's anything, to work on during the longer break, specifically for summertime, and ways that you can support them at home. But one of the number one tips that I would say, especially during the breaks, that's so important for us all, is to have fun. And to really just take the time and, take a breath and have fun. When we're thinking about the tools, we can also think about ways that we can introduce them to your child in ways that are fun. So maybe they've been utilizing them in school for specific research projects or assignments, but maybe now's a great time for them to utilize them for high interest content. So if they have special interests or hobbies that they're interested in learning about, they can then utilize some of these tools to try to play around with them. It's also a fun time to introduce them to some new tools. So a lot of times programs will have free trials. So maybe it's a 30-day trial where you have access to premium features and you can try them out at home and get some feedback from your child, see what works. And then breaking things up into manageable chunks, and thinking about, okay, well, are we going to be utilizing, maybe we're going to do digital pen pals, or we're going to talk to family across the country. Maybe they're going to utilize it for a journal, and do some research on a new topic that might be interesting to them. So thinking about all those pieces and just really making it fun, because it's so important during, the breaks to really take a moment for us to take a breath and have fun.
I love those pieces, right? Because it is, I try to have that on the forefront, right? Because we are so hyper focused in general about what's not working
Mhm.
and what can we do differently and how do we best help our children. And absolutely, those are things are important. But I think we also have to take a step back to think about, what they're growing. They're only going to be in our home for so many years and so many summers. When I think
What's
about
that?
that, it just So yeah, let's not even go there. So yeah, so when you think about those things, but you also, one of the things I really encourage moms about is that, growing and building a strong relationship with your child. So when your child is an adult and maybe they're struggling with their own child's dyslexia, or maybe they're struggling with their dyslexia as they're, dealing with a boss or whatever, are they going to really remember that you sat down and made sure they did their second grade homework? Yeah, probably not. What they're going to remember is that you were
Mhm.
there. And yes, you were there when things were tough, but you were also there to have fun and to be silly. And I like, especially like when we read, I do funny voices. I'm kind of a silly person sometimes with my daughter, but I just try to think about it like this is not a job. Like it feels like a job for moms, absolutely. It's a job for us, maybe too. But for our kids, it shouldn't feel like work all the time, right? They need to go outside and play soccer and they need to have fun. And one little quick story I'll share with you is that recently our daughter's been playing Minecraft for a number of years. And I'll tell you, like, I get some criticism from people about gaming. And at the beginning, I was like, Minecraft, I don't know what this is, but we made a conscious effort to be involved in that process with
Mhm.
her and to learn more about it. And, she does watch a good bit of YouTube videos to learn how to do things. She does have several books that, may be specific on how to farm or how to do different things. But I say all that to say recently our daughter asked to get a private server. And so we let her use some of her allowance. So she pays, I think it's $5-6 a month for a private server. And she has invited her 24 fifth grade friends from her school to be part of her server. And
Well,
now she is like the little mini expert in the group. Like people that have never played are like, how do I do this? And how do I do that? And she's really taken a lot of ownership. So much so, I say this story to say this, so much so that the teachers are saying, you know what, we should get Minecraft Education Edition. Like we can see that the kids are having conversation at lunch. My daughter evidently holds little meetings at lunch to discuss.
that's
Yes, ma'am, it
amazing.
is happening to discuss this. And it's really, kind of positioned her differently as far as anxiety and socializing and some of the social emotional pieces, right? But also like they're having to text in the chat, hey, I lost you, or how do I make a diamond pickaxe, or like they're having conversation and then they'll jump on a Zoom call so then they can see each other and talk while they like it's a whole process. So but I've done two things. One is been open-minded about what this looks like, keeping in mind that I want her to be safe, right? And so we've also created an environment where her and her friends can be there and we know they're safe. I can see who's on my server. Like we have a lot of, I don't want to say control, but as a parent, I just want you to know there are ways that we can work around these things. Huge learning curve though, right? I've never had a private server. Kinks happen. People call, they're like, well, how do I get on Minecraft from the Xbox? I don't know. I don't own one. So I have to jump on and figure that out through YouTube
Mhm.
tutorials or whatever. So I say all that to say though that but now we're talking a language, right? Like I'm going to admit it. I'm always falling in a hole or getting lost when we play as a family. I don't ever, I'm definitely still a noob to Minecraft. I don't do well, but what I have done well is position myself to be there to help support her. Right. And to also encourage her, because for those that don't know about Minecraft, it is like a blank slate. They go in there, they create, but you can't just say, I'm going to put glass windows in my house. You have to go get the sand. You have to put it in I don't know what the thing's called. You have to actually create pieces when you're in survival mode and not creative mode. So they're really using a different part of their brain and they're having fun. So I just say that to say that embrace the technology. Don't let it be intimidating or overwhelming. You can use it for instruction, but then you can also use these things for times to help your child have fun and to make life fun and to really enjoy being with them. And that's what they're going to remember. And in addition to that, she's learning some things, right? She's learning some things. She's I'm whispering because she can hear me. And, it's fun. She's learning leadership. She's learning how to, ask for things. People steal stuff out of her chest. And she's like, they stole I'm like, well, is your name on your chest? Well, no. Well, how do they know that's your stuff? Maybe they think it's a villager. So we're having conversations about, how do you let your friends know? And so it's really, opened a lot of different doors I didn't expect. And it's also challenged us to learn things that I wasn't expecting, not only as a family, but just dealing with technology from a different perspective. I'm like, yeah, I didn't think this through when I sent out hey, join our Minecraft group. So now mom's become Chris is like, I don't even know. How do you even do that? I was like, I know it's a whole background thing of the server. But, and it's been frustrating. There have been days where I just couldn't figure something out, but I stayed there with her. Right. And I'm not saying everybody go out and get a Minecraft account. What I'm saying is find what it is for your family and your child and what lights them up, because now when she's struggling in these other areas, she has this beautiful outlet. And who knows, she might become an architect. She might become, a design. We don't know. Right. But this has given her the opportunity to really open up a blank slate and create. And it's been a lot of fun, but it's also been a huge learning curve. And I love that you said that, think about these time periods of taking those breaks. And maybe for you, like one of the pieces too, in her class, a couple of her friends have gotten together and they're working on a movie. And so she's writing the script. So she's doing these other things too, that are very creative. And like you were saying, if your child likes to journal, but the spelling is a challenge and things, that's great. Cause she can talk it. She can, do the speech to text and it will type it out for her. That can be frustrating though, when it doesn't understand what you're saying. That is not the word I meant to say. Yeah. Cause there was a word the other day in the chat and Chris was like, she didn't catch it, but I don't know how that word came up. So, but being there along the journey is important because you're growing in those relationships that are lifelong. And I hope to have that strong relationship. And not everybody has that. And I get that. Not everybody has that relationship. And it is a struggle sometimes for some families to find that fit. And the child may really be struggling. But I just encourage people to take a step back and figure out, why is there this pushback? Is it because we haven't found the right remediation? Is it because your child needs an additional service, like a counseling session or art therapy, or what is it where your child is getting stuck? And yeah, there are times when they don't like us, and that's okay. That's just part of the process of parenting. But I think when we think about how can we utilize these technology pieces, because that, again, our children are digital natives, and think about summer and think about these school breaks and how can we incorporate, like we're incorporating learning and they don't even get it. Like they don't know it, but that's what's happening here. But making it fun. Right. So I love that you shared those pieces, because it's just, as you can tell, something that's a passion for me as well.
Well, and thank you for sharing that story too, because thinking about your, whole experience with it, whether it be the challenges, the roadblocks, and then showing how you overcome them and how you work through them. That's such a great life skill across the board. So I'm thinking about the whole child and thinking about the emotional pieces. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just so essential. All right. So let's finish up and kind of wrap up today. It's been great again, Katie, having you on the show. But before we wrap up, I've got a question I want to ask you. That's just kind of a fun question I like to ask people, which is, right now in your life, what is your best mom hack? What right now is saving you time? I know you shared earlier with me off air, and hopefully it's okay to share that you have a 3.5-year-old and a 9-month-old. So you're a busy lady as well. And so what I love just to chat with moms in general about, like, what's saving you time? What's your thing that you're using right now? Or maybe that's kind of your go-to. Do you have kind of a go-to thing that you're doing right now that you'd like other moms to hear about?
Let's see. Well, one, I would say definitely, the technology piece of the Google Calendar is amazing between my husband and I to try to plan things out. And this past week, we really tried to do some meal planning to try to think ahead, and we utilized the crock pot. So I don't really know if that's a mom hack or if it's
a life hack, right? Like it's just a survival. Well, hey, you just said it's a survival hack, right?
Now.
Like, how do I get through the week? Yeah.
Right now. Yeah. It's busy. The days are busy, but they're a lot of fun. And, yeah, so, I mean, we're trying to take each day and try to, figure out what we can do, to make things a little bit, easier on a day-to-day basis.
And some days are such a struggle, right? Like this is like, can I just get through the day? So yeah, but no, I love those pieces too. Just figuring out, how do we best manage our day. And I love the Google Calendar. I have lots of friends that use it, and we use it a little bit for like, especially when people have older kids and they have multiple activities. And so they're trying to coordinate with a spouse or a significant person in their life to say, okay, we got soccer at this time, ballet at this time. We've got all these things going on. And believe me, Katie, you're going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be here. I know right now all your littles are at home, but it's going to be like a quick blink of the eye. And my mom was so right about that. She's only going to stay little so long. And she was so right. So you will be there as well, trying to coordinate all of the activities and pickups and things of that nature. But I'm sure even right now, just with using the Google calendar and things of that nature, it helps just to organize even probably your business time too, as far as what you're doing. So no, I love it. Well, again, Katie, I just want to say a huge thank you for your time and for what you're doing as well for, the dyslexia community and all the pieces that you're providing and giving back. And we'll provide all the links to how people can find you, Katie. And one of the ways that I found Katie was through Instagram. And as anybody that's been listening for a minute knows, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with social media. I think it's great, but it can be a time suck. So I have to be really careful about that. But I have to say that Katie's account is one of the accounts that I do follow. And she's got some great tips out there. And, just things that, like you were saying earlier, just things that you would think that, oh, I should know that. And you're like, oh, that's a good reminder. Because sometimes we forget about pieces that we could be utilizing. And so I always love to when I pop on to see kind of what you have out there right now and what's going on, because those pieces are a good way for me to continue to learn as well and educate myself. So, I think our community is a very unique community and a very open community. And I just love that you're working in that space and supporting us. So thank you for that.
And thank you for everything that you're doing to spread awareness for supports for dyslexia and resources and assistive technology. And it's just been such a blessing to be able to connect with so many different parents and teachers across the country. So thank you for all that you are doing.
I appreciate that. All right. Well, I will absolutely provide you with information on how you can get in touch with Katie. Let her know that you found her through Dyslexia Mom Life. She always loves hearing from our audience and connecting with you. So thank you for that. Thanks for listening today. If you want to learn more about dyslexia and raising a child with dyslexia, head over to dyslexiamomlife.com for more dyslexia resources. If you want more support or to chat about this episode, come join me and other amazing moms in our private Facebook group, Dyslexia Mom Life Podcast Community. Be sure to introduce yourself to the group. Have a great week, and remember, you got this.